All right, so get ready for another deep dive, and this time we're looking at IELTS speaking part 1, where you really need to, nail that first impression.
Oh, totally, yeah.
So we're going to be breaking down a super helpful YouTube video by Podcast Speak English.
Okay.
And this one I think is especially useful for anyone out there who, is an American English speaker,
Yeah.
but is prepping for the IELTS, which, as we know,
Right.
is a British English exam.
Exactly. And that can be a little trendy sometimes for American English speakers.
Oh, absolutely.
There are so many little differences that you might not even realize.
I know.
And it can really trip you up in the exam.
Yeah, I can already picture myself totally freezing up.
Oh, yeah.
If they ask me about do you live in a house or a flat?
Absolutely.
Instead of apartment,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's just those little things.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is
Yeah.
the video says you can actually use either American or British English
Right.
as long as you're consistent.
Totally. As long as you're consistent throughout the exam.
Yeah, that's a big relief.
Is a big relief.
So let's jump into some of the examples they give
Okay, sounds good.
to see how they handle this in practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first question is that classic, do you live in a house or a flat?
Right.
And the expert in the video, they just jump right in and use the British term.
They do.
They say they live in a house, but they don't stop there.
Okay.
They don't just say oh, I live in a house with my family.
Yeah.
They say, it would be impressive if I could cram my gigantic family into a tiny flat.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
Yeah, using the word cram is just brilliant. It's informal,
Yeah.
But it really creates this vivid image in your mind.
Yeah, it's so descriptive.
Like you can just picture this family bursting out of this tiny apartment.
Totally.
And that's what makes language memorable.
Yeah.
It's not just about using the dictionary definition.
Right.
It's about adding that personality.
Yeah, okay. So I have a question, though.
Yep.
Is it actually okay to use slang on the IELTS?
Okay, that's a good question.
Because I always thought you had to be super formal.
Yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act.
Okay.
Because the IELTS is formal.
Right.
But it also assesses your fluency. And using slang well can actually show that you're comfortable with different registers of English.
I see.
And that can be a plus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it shows you have a wider range of vocabulary.
So it's you're showing the examiner that you're not just reciting some memorized phrases.
Exactly.
You actually understand how the language works in different situations.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And later in the video, the expert even uses the slang term, the burbs.
Oh, yeah.
When she's talking about moving out of the city.
Okay.
Again, it's informal, but it's effective.
Right.
It shows that, these idiomatic expressions.
Okay, this is making me rethink my whole IELTS vocabulary strategy. Because I always thought I had to use these really long, complicated words.
Right.
But maybe it's more about just finding the right word, whether it's formal or informal.
It's about choosing words that are accurate.
Okay.
Appropriate for the context.
Yeah.
And most importantly, engaging.
To make an impression.
Yeah. You want the examiner to actually be interested in what you're saying.
Okay.
Not just checking off boxes on a checklist.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got cram, we've got the burbs. Any other examples of this kind of impactful vocabulary?
Well, the next question they ask is, how long have you lived in that house?
Okay.
And the expert says she's been there for 9 years.
Okay.
Which she describes as bonkers.
Bonkers. Okay.
Which again is slang.
Yeah.
But it adds that touch of personality.
Yeah.
Shows she's not afraid to be expressive.
It's way more interesting than just saying, I've lived there for 9 years.
Right.
9 years bonkers.
And she doesn't stop there.
Okay.
She throws in another gem. Ooh, the phrase blank is all get out.
Okay.
She says 9 years feels bonkers because it feels like yesterday.
Okay.
Adding, that's boring as all get out.
Okay, wait. Blank is all get out.
Yeah.
I've never heard that one before.
It's fantastic.
Okay.
It's a great way to add emphasis without using those overused words like very or extremely.
Oh, I see.
Imagine saying the traffic was bad as all get out.
Okay, yeah.
Or I'm excited as all get out about this trip.
I see.
It just adds a bit more personality.
Oh, okay, yeah, it does.
Buddy.
Okay, so I can definitely see how that kind of language could make you stand out.
Yeah.
In an exam where everyone's trying to impress.
Exactly.
But is there a risk of sounding too informal?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it brings up a really crucial point, which is intonation.
Okay.
How you say these phrases actually really matters.
Okay.
You need to deliver them with confidence, clarity,
right,
and use the appropriate intonation to show that you're aware that it's informal.
You're using it intentionally.
But you're comfortable using it.
Got it.
In the right context.
So it's not just about the words themselves. It's about how you use them.
Exactly.
Okay, my brain is like buzzing with possibilities now.
Good.
So where do we go from here?
Well, let's dive into the next question they look at in the video.
Okay.
One that might trip up American English speakers even more.
Uh-oh.
The question is, what do you like about where you live?
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Let's see how they navigate this one. So the expert in the video talks about how much she loves seeing trees from every window.
Okay.
Even though she lives in like a small city place.
Mm-hmm.
She says, just being able to glance greenery no matter what window I'm looking out of.
Oh, glance. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
It's a bit more sophisticated than just saying like see or look, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of implies that like she can't like fully escape the city.
Right.
Because she's in a small space.
She's still surrounded by buildings and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But those little glimpses of nature make a difference.
Exactly. And you know what else I noticed?
What's that?
She connects her answer back to that earlier idea of feeling crammed.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Remember when she was talking about her family not fitting into a flat?
Yeah.
It creates this nice flow between her responses.
Yeah, that's got to be good for like coherence and fluency, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It shows the examiner you're thinking about the whole conversation.
Okay.
Not just answering each question in isolation.
So it's like you're building a story.
Exactly.
Sure.
And speaking of connections,
let's
move on to a question that really highlights those classic British versus American English mix-ups.
Oh.
The question is there a garden in the place where you live?
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, for American English speakers, this is where things can get a little confusing.
Yeah, because, I mean, when I hear garden, I think of, like, a place where you grow flowers and vegetables.
Exactly. But in British English, garden can just mean...
Yeah, right.
Like a yard?
Any outdoor space?
Yeah, like just having some grass outside.
I can see how that could lead to some misunderstandings on the exam.
So how does the expert handle this?
I know. Let's hear it.
She actually addresses it directly.
Oh, good.
She says, this is tricky because I know garden in British English is more like a yard, like having grass outside your domicile.
Hold on. Did she just say domicile?
She did.
Fancy.
Right. It's a perfect example of how you can elevate your language without sounding like you're trying too hard.
It's not like a super obscure word.
Right. It's still understandable.
But it's definitely more sophisticated than just saying house or apartment.
Exactly. And it fits the context perfectly.
It does.
It shows the examiner you have a strong vocabulary.
So she's basically doing two things at once, right?
Yeah.
She's clarifying the British versus American English thing. And she's showing off a high-level vocab word.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
I'm impressed.
And it highlights an important point for anyone aiming for a high IELTS score.
What's that?
You don't need to cram your answers
with
tons of obscure vocabulary.
No.
It's about choosing the right words for the situation and using them effectively.
Okay, so we've seen some great examples of specific words and phrases to use. But the bigger question for me is, like, how can I find this kind of vocabulary on my own?
That's a great question.
You know, I don't want to just memorize a list.
Right.
I want to develop that skill of choosing the right words in the moment.
I think the key is to start paying attention to the language that you hear in different contexts.
So, like, be more aware.
Exactly. Listen to how native speakers express themselves. In casual conversations, formal settings, and everything in between.
That's like being a language detective.
Yeah.
You're like observing and collecting words.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
Try using new words and phrases in your own conversations and writing.
I like that.
The more you practice, the more natural it will become.
It's like anything else, right? The more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
But let's be real.
Okay.
There's always going to be that element of nerves.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to the actual exam.
For sure.
It's a high-pressure situation.
It is.
It's natural to feel anxious.
Totally.
But one thing that really helped me was shifting my mindset.
Okay.
Instead of viewing the examiner as a judge, I tried to see them as a fellow language enthusiast.
I love that.
Someone who genuinely wants to hear me express myself.
It's like you're sharing your thoughts and experiences with someone who's actually interested.
Exactly.
Not just trying to perform for a grade.
And remember, the examiners understand that you're not a native speaker.
That's good to remember.
They're not expecting perfection. They're looking for your ability to communicate effectively.
In English.
That's reassuring,
Yeah,
right?
it is. It is.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From specific vocabulary examples
Mm-hmm.
to broader strategies
Yeah.
for building confidence.
And managing those nerves.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
there's one more question that's been on my mind.
Okay, what's that?
We keep talking about this balance
Yeah.
between formality and informality.
Right.
Choosing the right word for the situation.
Huh.
But how do you actually know
Yeah.
what's appropriate for the IELTS?
Is there like a secret code book or something?
I wish.
Right.
But I think the best guide
Okay.
is to listen to a variety of native English speakers,
Okay.
both British and American.
Yeah.
And pay attention to the language they use.
In different situations.
Exactly. It's about developing that ear
Uh-huh.
for what sounds natural and appropriate.
So it's like a combination of observation
Right.
and practice.
And remember, the IELTS is designed to assess
Yeah.
your ability to communicate
Mm-hmm.
in a variety of situations.
Right, right.
So while you want to avoid overly casual language,
Okay.
you also don't want to sound like you're reading from a textbook.
It's all about finding that sweet spot,
Exactly.
that balance between accuracy and fluency.
You got it.
It really is all about finding that balance, isn't it?
It is. And, this whole conversation has really gotten me thinking.
Yeah.
I used to think that acing the IELTS was all about, like, memorizing grammar rules
Mm-hmm.
and using the biggest words possible.
Oh, yeah, like trying to sound super smart.
Exactly. But as we've seen from these examples,
Right.
it's not just about what you say.
It's how you said it.
Exactly. It's about using language effectively and engagingly.
So true. And speaking of key takeaways,
Yes.
let's recap those two big ones from the video.
Okay.
First, we learned that using either British or American English is totally fine.
Right. As long as you're consistent.
Don't switch back and forth.
Yeah, no flip-flopping.
Exactly. And the second takeaway
Was the importance of using interesting vocabulary.
is to spice up your answers.
Yeah, to make them stand out.
And they gave us some great examples.
Like,
Blank is all get out.
oh yeah,
And cram.
those are good ones.
And remember, they emphasized intonation.
Right.
It's not just about the words themselves.
That's about how you deliver them.
Exactly. You want to sound natural and confident.
Not like you're trying too hard.
Right. Like you're just showing off.
Okay, so the video focused on vocabulary related to houses and homes,
Mm-hmm.
but how can we apply these principles to other IELTS topics?
That's a great question.
Like what if they ask me about my hobbies or my work?
Well, that's where those language detective skills come in.
Okay.
No matter what topic you're discussing,
Yeah.
try to find those vivid words and phrases.
That really capture what you want to say.
Exactly. Like you're talking about your love of photography.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, I enjoy taking pictures.
Which is pretty boring. Right, you could say something like, I'm captivated by the way photography allows me to freeze a fleeting moment in time.
Ooh, that's much better.
Right. It's more evocative.
It is. It's like you're painting a picture with your words.
Exactly.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
I'm glad you think so.
It's really changed how I think about preparing for the IELTS.
Well, remember, the IELTS isn't just a test.
It's a chance to show off your English skills.
Exactly. Embrace the challenge. Have fun with it.
And let your personality shine through.
I love that.
So on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive.
Okay.
We hope you've enjoyed exploring the world of IELTS speaking Part 1 with us.
And remember, whether you're aiming for a top score
Or just looking to improve your everyday English.
the key is to keep learning, keep practicing.
And keep exploring this amazing language.
Until next time, happy learning.